want to turn our attention to a very special guest who is joining us live.
He can't even prove any of that. You can't prove I was there. You can't prove that I actually committed any crime, that I actually did anything, that I even discussed a crime with them. You can't even prove that. He can't prove one element of his case, not one.
That was defendant Franklin Ty Tucker. Unofficially here at Court TV, one of the most effective pro se defendants we've seen handling their own case. He has now negotiated a plea deal and is a free man. He defended himself during the trial in this past January, and it ended with a hung jury, declared a mistrial, and we were waiting for a possible retrial in this case. He was accused in taking part in an armed robbery where one man was fatally stabbed and a woman was seriously injured. In November, he pleaded no contest to the charge of robbery with a weapon, and he was sentenced to time served. And he joins us now, the defendant from the Treehouse murder trial that most of you watched here on Court TV, Franklin Ty Tucker. Franklin, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. Tell us first about this news. It's new to us, not new to you. It happened in November, but what is the latest with your case?
Well, you know, I just took a no contest plea, and, you know, it got down. They came down and they asked me for, you know, they wanted to do some negotiations. And, you know, the thing is, you know, I was looking at things, you know, they've got me behind bars and I'm trying to do it pro se from behind bars, and they've got the leverage over me of being able to take me to jail, you know, put me in jail whenever they want. Still got the you know, life sentence hanging over my head. But once you understand what no contest means, then all of a sudden it's a little bit of a different story. You know, I told the prosecutors during the negotiations, I was like, you know, look, you find me something where I don't plead guilty and I don't do a single day's worth of punishment. I know probation, not a single day's worth more in jail, nothing like that. And if you can come back with me, you know, with something where we can do that, then you know, then we might be able to talk. They came back with me 2 weeks later. There was a couple of things I added on because you know, besides you know, getting no contest and getting time served, the other thing is I also had them waive all the costs of prosecution, which would have been an ungodly amount. I know there's people trying to figure out how much money that is. I'm sure it is an ungodly amount considering how much we spent. However, I looked at it as more of a lateral move. You know, look, you know, there were some threats thrown back and forth, you know, during the negotiations. And, you know, one of the ones was that they'll just, you know, they knew they couldn't beat me at trial. That much they knew. They actually admitted that. But the bottom line is could they get that one juror every time? And that is actually a very good possibility, especially fighting from jail, that they could go ahead and get at least one juror every time. And they were just planning on taking me back to trial over and over again. And, you know, considering Dennis Ward, the state attorney, just won re-election, I mean, they could potentially do that for at least the next 4 years and keep me in jail for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's a question some of our viewers may have about mistrials. There's no limit to how often they can get a hung jury.
They can keep on taking you back.
And Ty, I remember
and you got to think.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I remember you were very adamant about not wanting to take a deal that included murder. You talked about your kids. And even if you knew you didn't do it, even if you told them that you didn't do it, you didn't want to take something where you would have to say, I did commit this and I was there. Did they offer you time served before? And in exchange for a guilty to murder?
They offered that deal before, but it wasn't a very serious one. When we went to trial, they hadn't talked to their boss. They hadn't talked to the state attorney yet, you know, but they were throwing that around the first time. And the first time I was like, no, I mean, I need to, you know, like you just said, for my kids, no, we're here at trial. You're going to have to prove me guilty. And see, that's the thing about no contest. This is where a lot of people make mistakes, and there's been some false headlines out there about me pleading guilty. I have never pled guilty. And, you know, they've never proven me guilty, which is why I consider this kind of a lateral move. You know, it moved me forward, obviously, in the fact that it got me out of jail. And it also removed their leverage. But one of the cool things about pleading no contest is that since I didn't plead guilty and since they never found me guilty or proved me guilty, that means I can now take it to civil court, and that conviction it doesn't stand. It's not even admissible. So I can go prove my innocence in civil court, which seemed to make a hell of a lot more sense. Why am I going to sit there and allow them to keep me in jail and keep me incarcerated and keep on, making me suffer and using this leverage over my head when, we can go to civil court and that nixes all of that. All that's gone now. They don't have that leverage anymore. As a matter of fact, it changes the dynamics of how we fight this case from now on, because it's not over. I fully plan on proving my innocence in civil court, which now I can do.
Okay.
I'm free to do that.
Okay.
So that was kind of the idea.
I want to make sure our viewers understand, when you're saying that you were in jail, they may remember that you were not in jail during your trial. You walked in and out of the courtroom every day. You were interviewed, sometimes going in by our Court TV reporter, Matt Johnson. So tell me about
I remember.
Why you were behind bars during this time. I understand you were out on probation and there were some issues there.
I've been very vocal about how dirty the legal system is down there. And, they claim that I missed a UA, but that's actually not true. Even if you read the pretrial, their own report says I went, right? But I go there and they wouldn't let me test that day, right? So I come back and I pass the test. But they tried to say that I didn't go because they wouldn't let me test that day. And I have no control over that. That's up to the lab. Now, the judge, instead of doing what he should have done, which he's supposed to give you notice in a hearing, he doesn't do that. He just goes ahead and revokes my bond and puts me back in jail, and then hits me with an outrageous bond of $3.1 million. And I'll tell you right now, because at that point, then I'm going through the divorce with my wife. I have, not only do I not have it, but even if I did have it, I wouldn't have paid it. Because then you're talking about, man, they've already taken $200,000 from us that we'll never see again, and now you're asking for another $300,000. And you got to remember, that means my bond went up from $75,000 because we ended up having to re-up the bond for $75,000, but that means, my bond just went from $2 million to $75,000 to now we're up to $3.1 million. No, the whole idea was to lock me up, tie my hands behind my back, make it incredibly hard to fight, especially as pro se, and then rush me to trial, because the only reason we didn't end up at trial on September 6th is because I filed a motion to disqualify the judge. And when I did that, then we had to go to the third DCA because obviously he denied the motion. I knew that was coming. He denied the motion, but that meant we had to go to the third DCA, which meant now we had to wait months for the third DCA to make their decision, which gave me plenty of time to get ready for trial, even from jail. Back in jail, I was actually having to handwrite motions and send things via snail mail. You can't send it via email anymore.
Yeah, totally different.
There's a lot of complications fighting.
Totally different
fighting from behind bars.
Litigation. Let's listen back. You mentioned the judge. Let's listen back to one of those moments during the trial where things were quite testy between you and His Honor.
I'm in possession of a video that I would like to show Your Honor that proves that Mr. Mansfield and Mr. Alvarez committed fraud upon the court and fraud upon the jury yesterday in their closing arguments.
Thank you. I'm denying the motion. I recollect that. Can we? No, sir, I'm not going to argue any further. I've heard your motion. I've made my decision.
So it was pretty interesting to watch, but I actually want to play another soundbite quickly and get your reaction to it, Franklin, and that is the testimony of a key witness during your case that you became close to and who unfortunately has since passed away. Let's take a listen to Paula Belmonte, one of the victims in the case against you, who said that you were not the man who committed the crime. Take a listen.
My question is that, is it not reason to believe that if you admitted fraud to Tucker was a fellow, that you would lie and say that, oh, no, he wasn't the one?
Absolutely not. He can run hell just like Detroit does. So,
if he was involved.
If he was involved.
But you know 100% that he wasn't.
Yes.
So that was Paula during a deposition.
Yeah.
She then came and was in a hospital bed when she testified for you, but she's since passed away.
Yep.
How do you think that impacted things for your case and this plea deal?
Well, and in all reality, it actually didn't. We ended up at trial. We ended up using her perpetuated testimony. We ended up using the video of her testimony because we did have problems when we tried to do it from the hospital. But their case again got worse. You got to remember, at trial they didn't. The judge nuked off most of my witnesses, which included another victim who said 100% sure it wasn't me. So I had two victims on my side saying 100% sure it wasn't me. And he actually since went back to jail, and they had recordings of him telling somebody that it wasn't me again. So they actually had to provide that in discovery. But the thing is with the judge, you got to remember with the judge disqualified himself a week after trial. And I did make a JQC complaint. For those of you out there who don't know what that is a Judicial Qualifications Commission complaint. And we're going to be, Judge Jones is going to be lucky if he's still sitting on the bench in another month. You know what I mean? They're actually going over the trial. The Judicial Qualifications Commission is going over the video of the trial because, again, that clip you showed, he allowed the prosecutors to lie to the jury in a capital case. Especially lie about the murder weapon. You know what I mean? So he's got a lot of issues right now.
Well, like you said,
whether or not, there's talk of him retiring before he gets thrown off, but we'll see.
Allegations that it sounds like the right board is handling and will make a determination on whether that happened. You mentioned, I know you mentioned that you were going through a divorce. We, of course, have heard from your wife during this process because she was a great supporter of you. We definitely recognized her because she's one of the founders, co-founder of CrossFit. And you both joined us on Court TV. You were with Vinnie Politan speaking about just this case. So tell me about your family, your kids, your wife. I know you all are going through this divorce, but how are they handling this new news that you are free and that your case has been dismissed, essentially?
Well, everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. But my wife and I, we are divorced. The divorce actually was finalized while I was in jail. But the thing is since I've been out, no, we've been in contact, and now both of us, it took us a second for us to really believe it was over and that that we've won here, because we have won in a sense. What did it for us was we heard Dennis Ward, the state attorney. He got on, did a radio interview. And even during the radio interview, he admits he knows we're going to sue the sheriff's department. He knows we're going to sue the state attorney's office. He knows we're going to sue him personally. And you talk about somebody who did not sound happy about the deal. I definitely sound a lot happier than he does. So it is what it is. But, at that point, we both started, we haven't really quite accepted it's real. You're talking about a 7-year war, right? Basically is what we've been doing here. And, for 7 years, and then to just finally have the war be over, I feel like, like you're some soldier coming back from the battlefield, and man, everybody tells you the war's over, but, again, it's hard to believe. And technically it's not. She's actually helping, she's joining me in the lawsuits because they did a lot of damage to her too. It wasn't just what they did to me. So we're going to be going ahead and, we're looking at law firms right now to handle those lawsuits.
Well, it sounds a 7-year fight that you have been through, and it sounds like a lot more ahead. Franklin Ty Tucker, that's all the time that we have.
Not doing pro se.
But not pro se. I think we would suggest that pro se, not typical, not ideal, but you certainly handled it in a very effective way, and that is clear. So thank you for sharing every step of the way with us here on Court TV, and we will see what is next for you.